Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Brown, on the child care investigations, the Office of the Inspector General was created in DHS in 2011, I believe, for the same purpose as we're sitting here and having this conversation today. It's been the sole responsibility of DHS to provide that oversight, especially on the CCAP program, which appears to be pretty rampant fraud. The story last night was interesting, but not surprising. And what the story didn't include was, because of time, they could probably burn an hour on a news story based on what they found. Violations and 50, 60, 70 pages of violations on these programs, which are almost exclusively state funded. And so they chose to look at the top 10. That wasn't in the story. They chose to look at the top 10 CCAP daycare providers. Over a period of time, J. Cole's stops at morning, afternoon, and night, doesn't find a single one accessible, doesn't find a single activity at any of them, except for one that made the story, which we went back to, where the owner happened to show up. He asked her who she is, or she asked who he was, and she said she's the owner of a daycare, and asked how many kids you have. 80 of them. Most of these are placed in places that don't have parking, on-street parking, very difficult, right, in the city. So they ask, where are the kids? Well, they come at night. Now that might be true for some, but can you tell me one daycare in this state that operates with 80 children overnight or in the evening? Commissioner?
Thank you, Chair and members. So we do know that there are a number of child care centers that have a variety of hours that operate. Some do begin in the afternoon and some do operate overnight to accommodate families that work overnight shifts. And there aren't any specific requirements that child care providers operate during specific hours. So I don't have a breakdown of the hours that child care providers across the state do operate. But I appreciate the question. I certainly understand the concern that you're raising.
Mr. Chair, follow. Senator Koran. So, Commissioner, I've never seen, we've been doing this a long time. My wife runs a daycare. Mm-hmm. Those are challenges, but very few of those exist anywhere, more or less one that would serve 80 children. And in addition to, they only stopped at the top 10. Not a single activity, even in those centers. And pretty busy, going to shop in the morning, be pretty busy activity, dropping off 80 kids. We would see those things. But really, the story hasn't changed. We did the same thing in 2017 when we had brave whistleblowers come up and talk about the impediments of the ability for the agencies to do their jobs. I don't see anything changing. We know, I think many of us have people, good people on the inside who are telling us that systematically they are not being allowed to pursue adverse actions when these serious violations occur. I think one report says they're going to add 59 people. So what? It's been the agency's responsibility. You can talk about electronic records. It sounds good, but that was identified in 2017. The agency didn't need to be told how to put good business practices in. So we lean on the OLA again. I love the OLA, right? They do good things. I'm blessed to be on their commission. But we're talking the same story. And the other parts I have is when we look at the investigations or the annual reviews of those facilities, what hasn't been asked is, if somebody just randomly shows up to a daycare, which by the way, almost all are blacked out, no visibility inside, right? Which most businesses don't operate that way. And they showed up. So how do one of your inspectors gain access to a business that's inaccessible? And these businesses are getting millions of dollars, and the problem's been ongoing for 20 plus years. How are those reports able to get done? How are the investigation? Because some of them show that they physically must be inside because they're identifying hazards that exist. And yet, they're not accessible? So my fear is this is being perpetuated either through ineffectiveness, but willfully, are we allowing or giving them 2 weeks notice? Please, we're gonna be on the 3rd of January. So make it look like you're doing something. Because I just find it hard to believe that of those 10, I'm not sure how many were in there, but one had 80 children. Those are big daycare facilities, 100% funded CCAP dollars. How is that possible? And then I ask, of the electronic records, we go to who's verifying. If you get no source of who they're verifying, so you'll get the record sooner, doesn't mean it's valid. Maybe you can stop some cross-pollination or making up names going from one daycare to another, but it doesn't change that. It doesn't absolve you of the job that you haven't been doing for 20 plus years. And this is really simple. All they had to do is send a reporter out there and say, anybody showing up today? Nothing more than that would have to happen. You know exactly how many sites or seats are licensed for, or children are licensed for. You know what their hours are, right? If it's a nighttime one, then I want you guys to show up. Not a single one has done that. We're in the same boat. I just don't know what's going to change. 2017 we had it. Now we're here in 2025, and it's taken another reporter to go out and just kind of show the work you're not doing. And I want clarity. How are the inspections being done when they're inaccessible? We're allowing this, and your agencies are complicit in allowing this. I know we got good people, but there's something drastically wrong. A new inspector general isn't going to help you, but you get the same rules that impede it. These millions of dollars that are going out should have been stopped. You need to act on the side of caution, and we're going to be far more gracious in saying, oh, you did the right thing. We're not even seeing an attempt, and it's really simple. We're not even talking about conflict. Show up. And I know, and then I think what we have to do too is the counties are the ones doing a majority of the work in inspections. We need to know, because you're just a recipient of those reports, but then you have an obligation to act and to take actions on those licenses. With the serious violations we have out there, we're punishing too many good people. You're forcing great people out of this industry by some that are being overregulated and actually forced out. And in this case, you're stealing money from thousands of people who need that support, and from not only the taxpayers, but we need those seats to be filled with legitimate, viable families with need, and I just don't see it anywhere. And here again, you want more money? Great. You want new electronic? You should have been doing it 20 years ago. The last time we did this, records, the agency let them make them up. They didn't even have attendance. Like, we'll get them to you in a couple weeks. Doesn't sound like anything's changed. That was 2017, when I think we're at the same table having the same conversation. So what's going to change? How are you going to make sure that people are prosecuted, that they're not diverted when larger crimes, organized crime, which we've seen tied in all of these DHS programs, what's actually going to change? That's what I really want to know.
Commissioner?
Members and committee members, thank you for the question, and I certainly understand the outrage, and I certainly understand the concern. We do think that broader authority is warranted here, and that we certainly need to investigate that more thoroughly to ensure that agencies do have as broad authority as possible to investigate fraud and act on all aspects of fraud. I don't know that is fully present. I do think that the limit on receiving public funds statute that has been passed does provide additional authority to allow us to go after bad actors and prevent agencies from allow agencies to stop actors from utilizing multiple programs, and that has changed, and that will continue to improve services. So I do think some improvements have been made, but I agree that additional improvements need to be made, and we're willing to be at the table and continue to see that this is an important thing that we need to work on and are completely committed to it.
Mr. Chair, we could go all day on this one. We want something done, and I want the agency to function, and it's not. And I'd be more than happy to walk side by side, but so far nobody's taken us up on the offer. What are you going to do differently with the workforce to get the job done? And we can talk all we want about adding people. We got to change our business practices in a significant manner.